Hey guys, Pastor Mike here with you again for another Wednesday night of Sparks. I'm excited to be with you again. And of course, we only have 2 more weeks of Awana left. We have tonight and then next week. And so let's finish strong. And so tonight, we got a really awesome message just for you guys. And you know what? As we look at the Bible, all right, it's important that we look for answers, especially when we're scared or worried. Now, God gives us many examples to show us that God, is in control all the time and that we need to trust in Him. Now, here's a question for you. Have you ever been confused or afraid and not sure what to do? Sometimes we are asked to do something that we think is scary and hard. But here's the thing, God is with us, and He can give us courage and strength to do very difficult things at times. So tonight we're going to learn about a person named Gideon. Man, I love Gideon. Why? Because he learned to trust God rather than be afraid. And exciting things began to happen when you do that. Now Israel forgot God and started worshiping idols again. Man, they do that a lot, don't they? Well, because they didn't obey, things started to go very badly for them. Really badly. The Israelites' food was stolen, and their homes were destroyed by this group of people called the Midianites. Can you say Midianites? Yeah, it's a fun thing to say. It kind of rolls off the tongue. Many of the Israelites lived in caves just to survive. Well, after a while, the Israelites called to God to help them. Lord, please help us. Look at us. Look at what we're going through. And the Lord told them the reason they were being bullied was because they worshiped other gods, those idols, instead of Himself. But God helped Israel because, why? He loved them. God always helps those who love Him. So God looked around for a leader. Someone who He could trust to do the right thing, who could lead, who could obey. And guess who He found? That's right, this guy named Gideon. Gideon was an Israelite man. Gideon and his family and friends were being bullied by a big group of mean, nasty pants we called the Midianites. The Israelites were very, very scared of the Midianites. And here we see that Gideon is hiding from the Midianites while grinding wheat. Then all of a sudden, an angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon. Now let's read this verse together. It's in the book of Judges, and we see what the angel said. Here it is. And the angel of the Lord appears to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." Judges 6:12. Let's see what valor means. You guys know what valor means? Well, if you don't, let's see what that means. Well, valor means this: great courage in the face of danger, especially in battle. Do you have valor? Well, God was calling Gideon a mighty warrior. What a great name to be called by God, a mighty warrior. Now, Gideon was surprised by this. He was no mighty warrior. He was the complete opposite of that. His family was the smallest in the tribe. "I will be with you," God told Gideon. "We will destroy the enemy together." What a great promise from God. So Gideon asked the angel to wait. Well, he made a meal for the angel. He put the meal on a rock. And almost immediately, it was burned up by fire. Well, God wanted to be sure Gideon was with him, even though God had already told him He would be with him, and together they would destroy the enemy. Well, he held fleece in his hand and spoke quietly this time. Here's the verse. "Behold, I am laying a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said." Judges 6:37. Well, the next morning, it was just as Gideon had asked. No dew had touched the ground, but the fleece was soaking wet. How can that even happen? If no dew was around, but the fleece was soaking wet, how can that happen? Well, God, right? It was amazing. God did that miracle with the fleece. But again, Gideon was still feeling afraid and unsure of himself. So Gideon asked God to do one more thing for him, and this is what he said. Then Gideon said to God, "Let not your anger burn against me. Let me speak just once more. Please let me test you just one more time with this fleece. Please let it be dry on the fleece only, and on all the ground let there be dew." Judges 6:39. So it's the opposite. Dew wet, fleece dry. Okay? Well, the next morning, his request was granted. The fleece was dry, but the ground was wet. God did another amazing miracle. Now Gideon was sure that God would use him to defeat the Midianites, just as he has promised. Gideon was not using the fleece to determine the will of God here, okay? Just want to make this clear. Rather, he asked God to reaffirm the promise that he had already made him. Gideon needed that reassurance to calm his fears and his doubts. And guess what? God honored Gideon's faith by graciously giving this reassurance. So what happens next? Well, Gideon called an army to fight the Midianites. About 32,000 men joined him. Now, God tested Gideon. God told him, "There are too many men, send some home." But Gideon knew that he and his men would be fighting a huge army. But he obeyed God and sent 22,000 men who were afraid home. This is what it says. "Whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home and hurry away." Judges 7:3. So Gideon, again, and his army went from 32,000 to 10,000 after he sent all those who were afraid home. But God tested Gideon again. Look at this. "And the Lord said to Gideon, 'The people are still too many. Take them down to the water, and I will test them there for you.'" Judges 7:4. So God asked Gideon to take his men to the river to drink. Right? Come on, guys, let's go to the river. Let's get some water. God asked Gideon to look for the ones who drink standing up. Standing up, drinking. But if they're bent over in the river drinking, send all the rest home. So let's see what kind of army Gideon has left to fight with. What do you guys think? 8,000? 5,000? Guess what? Only 300 men passed that second test. Keep in mind, the army that they're fighting, the Midianites, were about 135,000 of them. So for every one member of Gideon's army, there was 450 of the other army. Now, God had a small enough army to do something crazy. Because think about it. You'd have to be crazy to go into a battle with that few men, right? But God loves crazy. Look at this. "And the Lord said to Gideon, 'With the 300 men who stood, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. And let all the others go, every man to his home.'" Judges 7:7. He would think he would lose this battle. But God, guess what? So the night Gideon divided his army into 3 companies. They had one that had clay jars, one that had trumpets, and one that had torches. They hid on 3 sides of the Midianite camp. Listen to this. "And Gideon said to them, 'Look at me and do likewise. When I come to the outskirts of the camp, do as I do. When I blow the trumpet, then blow the trumpets also on every side of the camp and shout, for the Lord and for Gideon.'" And that's Judges 7:18 through 19. So all at once, right? They had the battle plan. They're ready to go. So all at once, they blew their trumpets. They smashed their clay jars. They made a lot of noise there. They lit their torches and shouted, "For the Lord and for Gideon!" And God did the rest. So the enemy armies, the Midianites, had been asleep. They woke up by all that noise that Gideon's army just made. They were so confused by what they heard. What's going on? What's going on? And they started to fight each other. They got their swords and started killing each other. Many ran away. As they ran, Gideon's soldiers chased them down. Judges 7:21. Every man stood in his place around the camp, and all of the army ran. They cried out and fled. So the Midianites and another group of people, the Amalekites, no longer bothered the Israelites. The Israelites could live with no fear because they chose to stay with God. God wants to help us with our problems. It's easy for him to take away our fear. It is. But just like Gideon was able to have an army of 300 men win a battle that was crazy, that had so many men, God gives us the support we need for our lives. Listen to this verse in Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. All right, guys, I want you to watch this video to see what we're talking about.
Slapstick Theater. Gideon's 300 men. This is Gideon, who was a judge of Israel. In the time when Gideon lived, a group of people called the Midianites were taking over the Israelites' land.
Get out of here!
And the Israelites were starving.
Yeah!
So the Israelites asked God for help. God chose Gideon to rescue the Israelites.
Hey, everybody!
And gave him the power to lead an army of Israelites.
Yeah!
One day, Gideon and his army got up early and came close to the Midianite camp. God told Gideon that he had too many warriors with him.
Really?
So God told Gideon to let all the men who were scared go home.
All right, you can go home. Phew.
So 22,000 men went home, and Gideon was left with only 10,000. But God told Gideon that he still had too many men with him.
What, really?
He told Gideon to bring the men down to the water and that God would give them a test.
Okay.
Gideon did as God asked, and then God said, "Divide the men in two groups. In one group, put all those who cup water in their hands and lap it up with their tongues like dogs. In the other group, put those who kneel down and drink with their mouths in the stream." Only 300 men drank from their hands. God told Gideon, "With these 300 men, I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home." So Gideon did as God said.
You can go home.
That night, God told Gideon to get up and go down to the camp to listen to what the Midianites were saying.
Hey, Pura, let's go.
Gideon and his servant Purah went down to the camp and saw the huge army. There were too many men and camels for Gideon to even count.
Whoa, that's a lot of camels.
But Gideon heard a soldier telling another man about a dream he had that showed them that God would give Gideon victory over the Midianites. When Gideon heard this, he worshipped God.
Come on.
Then Gideon and his army of 300 men went down to the Midianite camp. They blew their horns and held torches in their hands. They yelled out, and the Midianite soldiers rushed around in a panic and tried to escape. Then God caused the Midianites to start fighting against each other. Because of God's power, Gideon and his army had victory over the Midianites that day.
Wow, what a great video, wasn't that? Man. All right, now I got some questions to see if you guys were paying attention, okay? Here we go. First one. What book in the Bible was tonight's lesson on Gideon from? Yeah, it was from the book of Judges. Number 2, in the beginning of our lesson, what did God say to Gideon to encourage him? Yeah, God told Gideon, I will be with you. We will destroy the enemy together. What a great, encouraging thing to hear in times of need. Number 3, how did Gideon change from the beginning of the lesson to the end? Yeah, Gideon was fearful in the beginning, right? But then God made him to a mighty warrior. God encouraged him by his word, by giving him the signs. Gideon knew that it was only by God's strength that he could do such impossible tasks. Guys, during this time, I just want to let you know that fear is normal. Having fear is okay. All of us gets nervous. All of us gets afraid. And when we do, we need to talk about it. Of course, talk to God about it through prayer, but talk to your parents about it. Guys, ask God for peace of mind. Don't bottle up those emotions inside you. Talk about it because it helps you understand the why. And of course, trust God with all your heart. Remember the verse, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. All right, guys, let's wrap it up by singing our Sparky song. Next week, last week of Awana, I'll see you guys then.